The late afternoon sun lay heavy across the Wyoming plains, burning red at the edges as it sank toward the far mountains. A dry wind hissed through the sagebrush, carrying the lonely cry of a hawk overhead. Dust swirled in little devils across the hard-packed road that led into the small town of Red Rock, a place with one street, 2 saloons, a blacksmith, and more trouble than a wise man cared to tangle with. Ethan McGraw guided his gelding through town with the casual ease of a man who knew how to handle both a horse and himself. Tall in the saddle, shoulders broad from years of work, his jaw shadowed with a few days' growth, Ethan looked like the sort of man who kept to himself and wanted to keep it that way. Most folks did not bother him. That was how he liked it. He had ridden into Red Rock for flour, coffee, and a coil of rope. The chores of the ranch never ended, and solitude left him no choice but to handle them himself. He meant to spend as little time in town as possible. Yet fate, as it often did, had other plans. It was the sound that caught him first. Not the usual bark of laughter spilling out from the saloon, nor the hiss of the blacksmith's hammer, but a muffled sob. It came from the narrow alley beside the livery stable. Ethan would have ridden past. He had learned not to poke his nose into business that wasn't his, but something in that sound rooted him in the saddle. A sob like that came from desperation, from someone with no safe place left to run. He dismounted slowly, boots stirring the dust, and stepped toward the alley. There, in the shadows, crouched 2 young women. Their dresses, once neat, were torn and dirt-streaked. Their long black hair tumbled loose around their shoulders. They clung to one another, eyes wide with fear. Even in their distress, their features were striking: dark, almond-shaped eyes, delicate cheekbones, and lips pressed tight to stifle further cries. They were different from the other women who drifted through Red Rock. Ethan knew instantly they were Chinese. The younger one, perhaps 18, clutched the elder's sleeve like a child clings to a mother. The older looked to be in her early 20s, her gaze sharp despite the tremble in her hands. When they saw Ethan, both froze. "They're going to kill us," the older one said, her voice little more than a whisper, trembling with an accent that softened the English words but did not weaken their meaning. Ethan's brow furrowed. "Who's going to kill you?" The younger lifted her head, her dark eyes darting toward the saloon down the street. A rough burst of laughter erupted from inside, followed by the crash of glass. She flinched. "The men who brought us here," she whispered. They said if we didn't obey, they would sell us, or worse." Ethan knew at once what she meant. He'd heard the stories. Chinese women tricked into coming west with promises of marriage or honest work, only to be forced into servitude in gambling dens and saloons. Red Rock was small, but not free of men who trafficked in such cruelty. The older sister clutched her shawl tighter across her chest. "Please, mister. We cannot go back. We will do anything. Cook, clean, wash clothes. Only, do not let them find us." For a long moment Ethan stood silent, his broad shoulders blocking the alley's light. He had lived long enough to know what trouble looked like, and here it was, trembling in front of him. 2 foreign girls on the run from men who wouldn't hesitate to draw blood. If he involved himself, he'd be marked for it. If he turned away, he could go home to his ranch in peace. He should have turned away. Instead, he remembered a night years ago, when raiders had come to his family's cabin in Missouri. He had been just a boy, but he still remembered his mother's voice, low, desperate, begging a neighbor for help while clutching her children to her skirts. That neighbor had looked at them the way he was looking at these girls now. Cold, calculating, weighing mercy against risk. And that neighbor had walked away. Ethan clenched his jaw. He could not be that man. Still, when he spoke, his words came out cold, because cold was the only way he knew how to keep the storm inside him from showing. "If you stay with me," he said evenly, "those men will hunt you. They won't stop. If they catch you, they'll kill you, and they'll kill me too." The younger sister's lip quivered. The elder shut her eyes as if the last thread of hope had just snapped. Ethan turned slightly, as though preparing to leave them there. His boots shifted in the dust. Then he stopped. He heard again the whispered plea, "They're going to kill us." He saw the terror in their eyes, and something old and buried inside him stirred, the piece of him that had watched his mother beg in vain. Slowly, he turned back. "You've got one chance," he said, his voice like gravel. "If you trust me, you follow my word, no questions. That means silence when I say silence. Move when I say move. Disobey, and we're all dead. Do you understand?" The sisters looked at one another. Fear and hope warred in their eyes. At last, they both nodded. Ethan extended a calloused hand. "Then come on. Before anyone sees." The younger clutched her sister's arm, and together they stepped forward. Ethan led them out the back of the alley, keeping to the shadows. His hand never strayed far from the Colt on his hip. Behind them, drunken laughter spilled out into the street. A door slammed. A man cursed. Every sound felt like a warning. By the time they reached the edge of town, dusk had deepened into night. Ethan helped them mount behind him on his horse, one sitting sideways, the other clinging to her waist. They rode hard, the prairie wind cold against their faces. Neither sister spoke. They only held on tighter, as though the weight of the man before them was the only shield they had left in the world. And Ethan, grim, silent, solitary Ethan, knew with every mile they put between themselves and Red Rock that his life, once empty and quiet, had just shifted forever. The prairie was silent except for the thud of hooves and the rush of wind through dry grass. Ethan pushed his gelding hard until the faint lights of Red Rock were swallowed by distance. Only then did he ease the horse to a slower pace, breathing steady and controlled though his pulse still hammered. The sisters clung to him, one pressed against his back, the other gripping the saddle. They were light as feathers but trembled like leaves in a storm. At last, Ethan reined in at a rocky outcropping that overlooked the valley. He dismounted and helped the women down. They stumbled, their legs weak, and he steadied them with rough but careful hands. "We'll stop here for a spell," he said, leading the horse to water from a narrow stream. "Can't risk riding straight to my ranch. If anyone's tracking, they'll expect that." The older sister straightened, brushing dust from her dress. "You are wise," she said softly. Her English was halting but clear. "My name is Mei Lin. This is my sister, An Li. We thank you for saving us." An Li dipped her head shyly, dark eyes downcast. Ethan gave a small nod. "Ethan McGraw." He crouched by the stream, filling his canteen. "You're not safe yet." The words cut the fragile air between them. Mei Lin's gaze flicked nervously toward the horizon. "They will come." "They'll come," Ethan said grimly. "Men like that don't give up easy. You're worth money to them. They'll follow." The sisters exchanged a glance. And Lee's lips trembled as she whispered, "Then maybe we should go. If we stay, you die too." Ethan looked at her then, really looked. She couldn't have been more than 18, her face soft with youth, but her eyes were shadowed by fear no girl should ever know. Something in him softened. "You run off alone, you're already dead," he said quietly. "At least with me, you've got a fighting chance." For a moment, silence fell. The stars wheeled overhead, bright and endless in the black prairie sky. A coyote yipped in the distance. Mei Lin folded her arms against the chill. "Why do you help us? You owe us nothing." Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't answer at first. He wasn't a man who spoke of his past. But the memory of his mother's desperate eyes returned unbidden. "Because someone should have helped my family once," he muttered at last. "But they didn't." Mei Lin's expression softened, but she asked no more. They shared jerky and hard bread by the fire Ethan built small and low to keep from drawing attention. The sisters huddled close together for warmth. Ethan sat a short distance away, back against a rock, revolver in hand, eyes scanning the dark. He hardly slept. By dawn, they were on the move again. 2 days passed in wary travel. Ethan guided them through gullies and across streams to mask their trail. He showed them how to ride behind him without jostling the horse, how to drink sparingly from the canteen, how to stay silent when crossing open ground. At night, he caught glimpses of who they were beyond the fear. Mei Lin, cautious and protective, always put her sister first. She cooked what little food they had and spoke with careful politeness. Li was quieter, but when she dared smile, it was like the sudden bloom of a flower in the desert. It was Li who asked about the ranch. "You live alone," she said one evening as they ate beside the campfire. Ethan nodded. "Just me and the land. Suits me fine." "Not lonely?" she asked softly. His eyes flicked to her across the firelight. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then, gruffly, "Sometimes." Li lowered her gaze, but a faint flush warmed her cheeks. On the third night, danger came. They had stopped in a grove of cottonwoods. Ethan's instincts kept him alert, even when exhaustion pressed heavy. And so he heard it, the snap of a twig, too sharp, too heavy to be an animal. He rose silently, Colt in hand. In the distance, faint torchlight bobbed against the darkness. Voices carried on the wind. "McGraw," a man's shout echoed. "We know you took him. Hand over the girls, and maybe we'll let you live." The sisters froze in terror. Li's hands clutched Ethan's sleeve. Mei Lin whispered, "It is them." Ethan's face hardened like stone. He pushed the sisters toward a thicket. "Stay low. Don't move unless I say." The firelight glinted in his eyes as he stepped forward, rifle slung over his shoulder. His voice rang cold across the night. "You'll get nothing from me." Gunfire cracked. Bark splintered from a tree near his head. Ethan dove for cover, firing back with calm precision. He picked off one man's torch, plunging the grove into darkness. The night became chaos, shouts, curses, the flash of muzzle fire. The sisters cowered, hands clasped tight, whispering prayers in their mother tongue. Each report of Ethan's rifle echoed like thunder. Minutes stretched into eternity. Then silence. Ethan returned, breath-heaving, hat knocked askew. Blood trickled from a scrape at his temple, but his eyes were sharp. "They're scattered," he said. "Didn't expect a fight." He knelt, reloading swiftly. "But they'll be back. Stronger." Mei Lin's face was pale as moonlight. "You risked your life." Ethan cut her off. "I said I'd protect you. I meant it." Li stared at him, tears shining in her eyes. She whispered something in Chinese to her sister before daring to touch Ethan's arm. Her voice trembled. "You saved us. Twice now. I owe you my life." Ethan looked at her, at the fragile hand on his weathered sleeve, and for the first time in years, something in his chest shifted. Not pity. Not obligation. Something warmer, more dangerous. He covered her hand briefly with his own rough palm against soft skin. "No," he said quietly. "You don't owe me. You just need to survive." But in Li's trembling smile, Ethan felt the weight of what survival could mean, not just enduring, but living, maybe even together. As dawn broke over the horizon, they mounted again. Behind them, danger still hunted. Ahead lay Ethan's ranch, lonely but strong. And for the first time in years, Ethan McGraw wondered if maybe, just maybe, it was no longer meant to be a place for one man alone.